Hello and welcome to DebV. Debbie here. Today I'm doing things a little different. We're going to start out on the computer with this embroidery design. I want to try to show the behind the scenes of how everything is done from beginning to end. So let's go ahead and get started with the computer. Sewing mug rug, and it has a sewing machine in it. Now, since so many people use Embrilliance, I opened it up in Embrilliance so that we could look at it. And let's see, it has 35 steps. Okay, don't let that scare you. I've already made one. I've been using it for a year or so over there next to my sewing machine. And sometimes it's actually a pincushion. It really didn't take that long. I have a flatbed single needle embroidery machine. My machine is a Baby Lock Flourish 2, and I can do everything up to 6x10 hoop. The one I've chosen to do, is a 5x7. They have multiple formats in there, and they have multiple sizes. I believe it goes up to the 8x12 hoop. And right now I can't think, so I guess I'll just slap it on a little note on top. I did not think to bring my iPad back here right now. I guess I better go and get that because the information is on that. You can, of course, print out the instructions if that's what you prefer. I'm trying to eliminate using so much paper, so I spent my little savings on a last year model iPad. It works great. You just have to have all those stupid lightning plugs and things. And that's fine. Adapters, But anyhow, so I'm going to be using that for my instructions off to the side out of camera view. So we will start our videos with showing the design on the computer. And this is what it looks like, the embroidery design looks like. And it has all of the different colors and steps here. If you do have Embrilliance, of course, you can go ahead and change any colors you want right here. I'm not too worried about it. For me, it's just the steps. Now, because I'll be using the iPad for the paperwork, I'm going to show you what you can do with this. Let's see, I want a print preview. Go to File, down to Print Preview. Now, it's going to have multiple pages, and up here is a little arrow, so you can say, next page. So this is what the design looks like, and this is the size of it. So if you want a template, you print that out and cut it and set it in your hoop. But it's 5x7 and it just fits in the 5x7, so you're pretty much set there. And here are your color changes. Now, as you can see, it actually goes past that one. If you want, you can just do the color changes, and I do tend to print those out because I mark them off with a pencil as I go. I'm old and forgetful, and if something happens and I say pause the camera and go to the restroom or something, and I come back, my brain is going to say, where was I? So yeah, so we go to print, and now we're going to go to properties. This is the way it is with my computer. And I'm going to go in here. It's just the default. We're all set. Actual size. And that's fine. But then here, pages, I'm moving my keyboard way over here. 2 to 3. I'm sorry if that got loud, because I had to lean towards my keyboard. I've set it way off to the side, and I put my face right next to the microphone. Now when I click OK, it's going to print those out. I forgot to check the dual side duplex. If you want it printed front and back and not waste paper, always check that. I'm worried more about making this video and forgot to check that part, even though I checked everything else. So now I've got them printed out, and I can just check them off with a pen, pencil, whatever you have handy as I go along. I can even write down the colors that I want to use for the different steps. And now let's go over to the machine and get started. What I have here is my 5x7 hoop, a piece of, see, I'm using very thin this time. Batting, it's actually fleece, iron-on. I'm going to put it with the iron-on part up so that it'll still be able to be turned in and out, no problem, even after it's ironed. I have ironed all my little pieces, and I went ahead and I put light fusible on the back, only because it helps grip it. When you put it on the fabric in the embroidery machine, some of these pieces are very small. I don't want my fingers there. I do have a chopstick that I use, but still it can shift, and I have discovered it does not shift as much if I have fusible on the back. So if you don't want that added stiffness to it, don't use the fusible, but be aware that it could possibly move. I'm not going to give you any measurements, but I've got all my little pieces all cut out here. Yeah, they will stick together. This is the backing. The backing will be cut twice as wide as what you're actually needing, and it has you fold it over and iron it. There is no fusible, no interfacing, no nothing on it. I went ahead and I printed out the color chart so that I could kind of check it off as I go. I'm going to be using an iPad for the instructions, and I didn't want it blocked. Where's my other little gray piece? Oh, no. See, this is what comes from cats. Nope. Totally my fault. And I blame the cat that's about to knock the box off. Yeah, I see you. Stop that. So I've got all my pieces ready. And yes, I know this one's cut cockeyed. It was just what was left of that piece. That's all I have left of that, I think. I hope not. I really loved that, but it's probably 15 years old at this point. So we are ready to get to the embroidery machine. Let's get over there and get started. All right, we've got it loaded into the machine. My machine says that it takes 37 minutes. It's 18,807 stitches. I have 2 layers of washaway here. It's hooped. I also pinned the edges. A little trick I saw on, did I just loosen that one up? Of course I did. A little trick I saw on Kay's cuts. I just love watching machines embroider out. So yes, I watch all kinds of embroiderers. First thing it's going to do is stitch down the placement line for your batting fleece, and I am using a very lightweight fleece iron-on. I'm going to put the iron-on up. Let's get that first stitch going. It tells you what size to cut all your pieces in the instructions, or you can, cut as you go. I am doing it with the iron-on side up. Now we will do the tack down. This is going to stitch it in place, and it actually does it twice. It'll go down and around and back. I remember what I was going to say. It came out again. I counted them up. I don't really have to worry about my color changes. Let me put a piece of tape on here. For my okay, don't ever use the tip of a pair of scissors if you've got, say, a knot caught in that tiny little bitty bar that holds your thread in place above the needle, because I tried to very carefully pop it out, and I pulled that bar down, and now my threads come out all the time. When I took it in for its maintenance the last time, I forgot to mention it, and it's not something that's noticeable. I mean, it's barely moved down, but my thread does pop out all the time while stitching. So I have to remember to tell them when I take it in this next time. Okay, anyhow, by my calculations, I don't need to worry about a thread change for the first 20 thread changes that it shows in the list. Everything gets broken up. For a single needle machine, to make the machine stop, you have to change the color. So it looks like a lot of thread changes, when in reality it's so you can do things like this. Now let's get this going. Now we just need to trim it up. I don't want it in my seams, well, as little as possible, so I'm going to take it and trim it close to the seam. Next, it's going to do the placement line for your center panel of fabric. Now I cut this bigger than it needed to be, even bigger than their instructions on purpose. I'm trying to decide. I'm going to do it this way. It happened to be how big the piece was, so I just went ahead and covered the whole back with the fusible. You don't have to use fusible. I just find that it grips it a little better, and I don't have to worry as much about, holding it in place and that kind of a thing as much, and some of the pieces get smaller. Now it's going to stitch it down in place. I'm just wondering if I could get a better camera angle. Now we need to trim this up. I'm going to leave about a 1/4 of an inch all the way around. That one I put a little close. That's on me, not on them, because there's going to be seams here. It's still going to be ironed in place, so even though that's close, it won't be a problem. I know it won't be a problem because I've made this before. And now I'm going to change your camera angle so it'll be bleeped, and then when it comes back, it'll look different. Now we're going to do the placement line for the left side of the mat. Now you want to take the fabric that you're going to use on the left side and you're going to place it past the stitch line. It's not going to show a whole lot of it. As you can see, I can put it here and you can see. So what I'm going to try, I want that, I think. So if I go past it a little bit more, I know I'm being picky. The other one, the other side, well, you know what? No, we'll just do it this way. We'll go ahead and we'll do it with the orange flower because the other side has a pink flower also. So I will get that. And I'm going to lay that there, slide it back in, drop it, and now it's going to stitch it down in place. This is a seam line. I don't really want it to catch on that needle. Since I've got the iron on it, it will. So I did neglect to mention that I use my foot raised. I think it's only one click higher than usual, than the default. I like doing projects in the hoop and I don't want it catching as much as easily, so I raised it a notch. I'm also working on a cathedral window quilt. I devised a way to do it in my hoop, and I had to raise the foot to get it across some of the seams. Okay, now we fold it down. If you covered it more, you're going to want to trim some of that down just so it's not quite as much fabric. You want to trim it no closer than 1/4 of an inch. Now it's going to sew down the outer edges. We're now to a point where the thread is going to actually show. So if you weren't using the color thread that you're going to use for your quilt lines, you'll want to put that on now. The reason I said 20 placements is because I put on the thread I had intended to use for the quilt lines and used it for everything. It blends with all of these fabrics so far anyways. So now it's going to quilt this section. Now it's going to do the placement line for the right side.
trying to get as much of that flour in there as possible, so I make it move it up a little bit more. I use a chopstick. Don't put your fingers next to your needle, ever. What is cat hair? I have cats. I want a nice crisp edge there. Oh my goodness, that's going to drive me nuts. I can't get it up. Where did this little bit of black thread come from? I'm not even working on a project that has black thread. Oh no, the sewing machine fabric is black and it happens to be quite thin and it frays a great deal. So that's probably where all these little bits of black are coming from. Now it's going to do the stitch line for this. It stops at this point so that you can change your thread if you're wanting to. This is going to do the quilting on this side. Oh, guess what I forgot to do? Pause for the moment. I forgot to verify that I had, oops, let's cut the thread, a full bobbin in. That was good, wasn't it? I was so worried about everything else that I forgot to change my bobbin. Yeah, I know, it's almost empty. Where did I set the bobbin cases? Oh, down here. So, I don't remember what came in this, but it is the perfect size for my bobbins, and they're pre-wound bobbins, and they do still like to unwind, which is kind of a pain, but it happens. And the whole big box doesn't fit right here below my machine. So when I discovered they fit in that, I just refill it and set them down inside. This is a pre-wound bobbin that this machine takes a different size, right? But I had a whole case of them. So actually I had 2.5 cases of them. I've been doing this a long time. So I wasn't going to throw them away. And at first I took that half a box and wound it up on other bobbins because these wouldn't work in here. I tried the little piece, it sent an adapter, but it was just a little too thick for these particular bobbins. After I used all the pre-wound, which when you wind them, they have like half the amount of thread on them. About 2/3. I wasted a lot of bobbin thread because I would wind it, that bobbin would still have thread on it, couldn't fit any more on the bobbin, threw it away. Whatever. Won't make that mistake again because it finally dawned on me, duh, why don't you just cut something and put it in there? So I took a bobbin and drew a circle on a piece of, I believe it's felt. No, it's heavy cutaway. And stuck it down in there and it works perfect. I'm going to back my thread up 10 stitches. I know it's more than enough. I just want them to lock those stitches into place, and it won't automatically do another lock. It's not like your sewing machine that you can just do a little reverse. So if I back up 10 stitches, I know it's going to go over previous stitches, and I have a leeway of 10 stitches. Doesn't mean that it won't still come out, but less likely. See? It went up and it went down. It's the way this design happens to be. Now I have a tail in the middle of this and I don't want it. And that's this design. Not every design will it do that. This design, it happened to be going back and forth over itself, so it worked out. If you find this bothersome, yes, you can trim it up, but please don't trim any closer than, say, a half an inch, 3/8 of an inch, because this is going to be your seam connecting the back to it. And you're going to trim it all up after you take it out of the hoop. If you trim it now, you just want to make sure you leave plenty for later. All right, our next step is, it's done that, we've done that. Now is the plate, I'm sorry, I walk away and you're bored. And now it's going to stitch down for the placement for your sewing machine body. It has a small piece here, which is on an antique machine. You actually wouldn't see that part. It's on the inside of the flywheel. You would loosen it up to be able to wind a bobbin, that kind of a thing. I started out on a really old machine. Well, because I'm getting really old. Not that old. 63 is not that old. Though my parents died so young that I feel old. My dad was 62, my mom was 30. So, you know. Anyhow, there's this tiny little gap in between, which is kind of a stinker to get cut out. You have to have very fine point scissors to get to it. But it's not the end of the world if you leave it in. You're going to be putting more fabric on top of it, and it'll cover it up. It'll just be a little bulkier right there. Make sure you've covered all your seam lines. Yes, I know I have a little spot on that. I don't know what I did. I had it sitting off to the side. Probably a sweaty finger or something stupid like that. Now it's going to stitch it into place. If you're worried about it moving, use your stick. Okay, time to trim out around all of this. And I'll be back in just a minute. I've got it all trimmed out nice and close, but not too close. We don't want to cut any of the threads. Now it's going to do the placement line for the faceplate and the wheel. Now, technically, they have you cut the piece and you put it on, and I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to throw all that fabric away. I can turn it on its side and still have plenty of space. We're going to be trimming it down quite close. If I'd have just made it longer, I could have used one piece. A bigger piece, you don't have to worry about it moving so much. So it depends on what you're comfortable with. Now I will trim that out. Now we'll do the placement for the base. I just saw thread. Where did I see it? I'm losing my mind. Okay. Now, you cut this big old piece, and you're really only going to use that much. And that's okay. It's not a waste. Really, it's scraps. Or at least that's what I'm using. But all the same. I can't see you. My thread blends in with the background so much I can't see it. Now it's going to stitch it into place. If you look real close, you'll see that it went off just a tiny bit. Should have put my glasses on, but that's okay because the satin stitch is going to cover that edge. I'm going to trim this down. Now we'll do the placement for the pin cushion. I think I would recommend a color just a little bit darker than your background, or after you've finished your quilting, switch to a different color that will cover it up better, or cover it up, I'm sorry, that will show up a little better, and then you won't have to worry so much about did I get past it or not, especially if you're trying to do it on camera, because on camera you're trying to work around the camera. Now it's going to stitch it in place. Yes, I know, orange tomato. Now I will trim this out. Alright, everything's all trimmed out. We've got all our applique on. From this point on, we're going to be changing the color threads continuously. And what it's doing first is it's got a piece of thread that's swirling around, goes through the needle, comes up, and goes to a spool on top. I want it to show up. I'm going to use coral. I was going to use pink, but I'm going to switch that to coral to this. So now it's going to work on doing that little thread and up here. Did I thread the needle? Yep. Okay, it's off. color is the thread, silver for the thread spindle, the shaft, and your needle coming out of the machine. I have a non-metallic silver I'm going to use. I had metallic out and I changed my mind when I was over here looking at stuff a few minutes ago. I thought, you're going to have drinks on there, hot and cold and sweaty, and I don't think I want metallic threads. So I dug out, I do have a gold tone one also. Let's see. Well, it is a metallic. I have one that's not a metallic, but it's not as pretty. So I'm going, that one, it's not, I don't know how to explain it, but this one is a silver colored embroidery floss thread. Let's say it right. Now our next step is going to be the black edging, the satin stitch on the body of the machine. You cannot get those knots through the eye of your needle. Don't try, just pull it out of the needle. Most embroidery machines have a self-threader. Alright, our next bit is going to be the faceplate and the flywheel, which I'm going to go to a like medium gray. I think it looks like pewter kind of a thing, so that's what I'm going to use.
I'm having to dub here. My microphone went a little nuts on me here. So what we're about to stitch is the edging and deco on the faceplate and the flywheel. You'll want to pick the appropriate color of thread and thread it up for that section.
Sorry, figured out what's wrong here. I somehow had looped it around something on my sewing machine, and I just unlooped it.
You will want to change the color of thread to the one you're going to use around the base. The next piece is the base. It'll do the edge satin stitch.
Now it's going to do the orange around your tomato. Our next color is the green leaves. Now it's time for the green leaves at the top of your tomato.
Load up the color that you're going to use for the decoration part of your sewing machine. I'm going to use Coats & Clark's Gold. It is a type of metallic.
Okay, I might have been pushing it a little with this one. That's all right. Back it up a little. The nice thing about this one is it doesn't get run sideways, so it usually works okay.
There are 2 spools of thread here, and this is going to stitch out the farthest spool first. Now thread up for your second spool. Now it's the third spool, the one next to the pin cushion. Put in the thread you want to use. What it's going to stitch out now will be the tops and bottoms of each of the individual spools. You could use, say, brown. Used to be they put them on wood. Or what I'm doing is using white, because now they're usually on white plastic. I have rethreaded my silver because now it's going to stitch out the pins in the pin cushion. Thread in the color you want to use on your pin heads. My pin heads are yellow, so I'm going to be using a yellow thread. What we need to do now is take our 2 back halves because the next thing being sewn out is sewing that to it. So you will take one of them. Now you're going to put the folded edge towards the center, and I'm going to overlap them by an inch. There's plenty of fabric for doing it. There's markings on my hoop, so it's really easy for me to line it up. We're going to put the right side down first, and then I'm going to put the left side over top. I'm going to have the folded side to the center again, and I'm going to put it at where that center mark on my hoop is. Now there's a 1-inch overlap, and that's plenty. I have done some types like this, smaller overlap, doesn't work out as well. And now we'll stitch it down. Make sure you use something to hold it down as it's stitching. Be careful when you're going over the overlap that it doesn't catch. When it starts coming around to this other side, be prepared to stop. I want to make sure that I don't catch the overlap with my foot and then it bunch it all up and sew it. So by stopping it, it slows down. And now I've made sure that it didn't get caught. You only need to do it when it's going against it, if that makes sense to you. And then it's going to stitch around again for security. Nice sturdy stitch there. It's all set. Now we just need to get it off the machine. We'll get it out of the hoop, trim it down, and get it turned. So let's get over to the table and see if we can't finish this project. That's the back side. I've got my pinking shears right here, so I'm going to try using these. My hands don't usually like these too much. Now see, this piece is big enough for me to use again on something else, so I'm going to save that. And you could cut it closer. I'm giving quite a distance from the seam. Come on, hands. Now, your corners, you will want to cut at an angle. So now we'll just take this. If you tuck those corners in first, and yeah, I could trim up all those threads and all that. It's going to be on the inside, so I'm not too concerned with it. Plus, I have a tendency to cut off the knots. If you cut too close to the end of that thread, to where it's seated, and you cut that knot, it will come out. So I've got a sweatshirt that says Aging to Perfection that I had created. I still wear it years ago. And it kind of looks like caca. That's not what I was looking for. Because I cut too close on the back and half of, what is it, the F, I think it was, the threads have popped out, so all you see is the underlay. That kind of a thing. It's like, oh, whatever. I really only wear it. I don't go anywhere if I can help it. I had to stop filming this earlier and take my younger son to his pain management. He fell off a roof. Wow, that's probably been, how old is he now? 7 years ago on Mother's Day. It was the day after Mother's Day, believe it or not. So when he called, and I had just seen him the day before, and he's saying, I need you to come up to the hospital. I'm like, what? Are you messing with me? My day off. Thank goodness I was off, because he lived out of town. So it was the hospital up by him, and then they rushed him to another hospital because he really broke his back. So I just need to, all my little tails here need to be trimmed up. And now I used to have a heat press, and I would just take something like this and just set it in there, and it would flatten it out so nice. I didn't get my corner out quite. But I sold that. I've got way too many toys back here. There's no room. I decided this was the year I was going to stop holding on to everything. I'm going to compulsively sit here and try to go after every little thread hanging out. And drive you nuts, probably. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? That is so gorgeous. This is the Designs by Juju sewing mug rug. It was a cost item. It turns out so nice. And if you're into sewing and like having sewing kind of stuff, especially in your sewing room or area, it is well worth it. It sews out beautifully. Beautifully. The lightweight fleece I used is actually plenty. I have another one. And you can see this one's flatter. I put it in the heat press and went and squashed it all down. And you can see these corners are rounded too. It's okay. They don't have to be pointy. But I made this one at least a year ago, maybe more. I did white tips on there. And of course, the tomato had to be red and blah, blah, blah. All the same, I decided I wanted these colors. I wanted the aqua. So I went with colors that blended a little better with that. I like it. I really do like it. It looks like it's a hair smaller. I don't understand that. Probably because it's not ironed. Ooh, I see a thread. When I iron it, that fusible fleece is going to fuse to the front and lock all those stitches in. So that should keep anything that I did a boo-boo on, or like where I had, oh, that's part of the decoration in the fabric. The spot where the thread had broke and I went back and went over it, that kind of a thing. It'll seal it, so it shouldn't unravel at any point in time. So I like that idea. This one was done with cotton batting, leftover scraps from a quilt. And you can see, once this is ironed, it's going to be about the same depth. It's pretty much the same. I just had bought some of this to try in another project and thought, I'm going to try it in this one. I think it'll work out great. So, yeah, that'll work out great, especially since I don't have the heat press anymore. So I'm not going to have all that pressure that it automatically added to it. Yeah, they're not tiny. This is the 5x7 right here. This one is a smidge bigger, so I either stretched it or I did the 6x10. I think I just stretched it a hair when I put it in. You know how you can increase the size 10% or whatever? I think that's what I did when I did this one. This one sits right next to my sewing machine, and I'll stick needles in it. I'll have my coffee sitting on it, whatever. I know it's scary to have fluids next to your very expensive sewing machines, but hey, I used to have an ashtray sitting next to mine. I smoked, let's see, I was figuring it up today. It's been 5 years since I quit smoking. So I was 58 when I quit smoking. And I started at 13. I smoked 45 years. So yeah, everything was ruined by nicotine. Oh, it's awful. I can't tell you how much fabric I had to throw away. And yes, I put on a ton of weight, but I can breathe. That's kind of important in life. Thank you for joining me. It's so much fun doing these videos with you, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. I hope to see you next week. Thank you, and bye-bye.